Let's go ahead and move on to our next presenter this evening. This is Lindsay Felthoven. Lindsay is an environmental studies major graduating in spring of 2022, so just a couple of weeks, right? Lindsay is currently pursuing honors, which I think is safe to say she will have when she's done. This summer she'll continue working with the Forest Health Watch, her host organization, and a few other POE Capstone students to turn the research that she's done into a manuscript for publication. So that's a good goal to shoot for. The title of our presentation today is It's Getting Hot in Here. I have trouble not start trying to sing now. It's getting hot. You don't want to see me do the dance. Sing it, Sean. No. I'm going to resist. It's getting hot in here. The relationship between climate change, environmental health disparities, and Seattle street trees. Her host organization, as I said, is Forest Health Watch, where she worked with Dr. Joey Hulbert, and her faculty advisor is our very own Dr. Tim Bellow here in the program and the environment.
Due to climate change and the increase of industrial development and urbanization, we are now seeing very high levels of pollution and heat islands forming in urban areas. This is happening right here in our very own beautiful city of Seattle. Urban residents are beginning to feel their neighborhoods warming, and this is because materials such as concrete and asphalt are really good at absorbing heat. But urban trees are great tools to alleviate some of this heat and filter out air pollution, as well as promoting general human health and well-being. One of the ways that trees can do this is by providing shade. Extreme heat is one of the largest stressors to human health, so it may be more important now more than ever before to preserve our urban trees. Trees are extremely important tools for the mitigation and adaptation for cities to adjust to our changing climate. Some of the important ecosystem services that trees provide are the removal of air pollution, carbon sequestration, and heat alleviation. The problem is, as global warming worsens, we're seeing a positive feedback loop between heat and tree dieback. So this means that as the planet is warming, trees are becoming less and less able to reduce heat, which just accelerates climate change. We're seeing an increase in the amount of tree dieback in cities all over the globe. Tree dieback refers to when a tree's canopy is thinning. So for my research project, I determined the percentage of dieback based on my own perception of how much the trees are thinning. I also wanted to compare this to the sociodemographics of the city, so I used the Environmental Health Disparity Index, which uses a scale from 1 to 10 and ranks it from least vulnerable to very vulnerable to multiple environmental exposures and hazards. The way this is calculated is by considering different factors such as PM 2.5 concentration, heavy traffic roadways, race and ethnicity, and rates of poverty, and more. So, for my research project, I wanted to look at, is there a correlation between the dieback of Seattle street trees and environmental health disparities, also known as EHD? And if so, what does this mean in terms of both human and tree health? So I worked with Forest Health Watch, and I helped them with collecting observations for their Western Red Cedar Dieback Map project. So this was a project on iNaturalist where they were mapping the dieback of Western red cedars all up and down the Pacific Northwest. And I was able to contribute around 60 observations to this project. In addition to this, for my own research project, I also created an additional project where I was able to go and record these same trees and answer additional questions such as the dieback percentage and other factors that I thought may be contributing to the dieback as well. And the reason that I decided to use Western red cedars as my indicator species is because this is a native species who is already showing trouble adapting to our changing climate. And this tree also has a large cultural significance to many indigenous tribes across the Pacific Northwest. So to begin my methods, I first downloaded Seattle street tree data and the environmental health disparity ranking into GIS and filtered to only include Western red cedars in those ranked 1 through 3 or 8 through 10. Next, I also only filtered to include medium-sized trees and privately owned trees, and I performed a random selection of 10 trees per rank to get a sample of 60 trees total. And I assigned all these trees an ID number and put them into Google Maps so that I could find them in real life easier. And here are the results of my data collection. On the y-axis, we have the dieback percentage, and on the x-axis, we have the environmental health disparity ranking. And as you can see, there is a slight positive relationship between the dieback and the environmental health disparity ranking. So this means that communities that are living with more environmental health disparities are also experiencing their trees having more dieback, and this means that their trees are less healthy. This is a critical environmental justice issue. Why? Because these communities that are experiencing more environmental health disparities are often comprised of families who may be people of color, low income, and have pre-existing conditions. And the acceleration of tree dieback is just going to exacerbate some of these issues. In order to implement mitigation strategies against tree dieback, we first need to understand what factors are driving this dieback and what communities are being affected most. To do that, we need more research, and if you would like to contribute to this research, you can scan this QR code and go out on your own and contribute observations to that same Western red cedar dieback map. And if you do, you'll be a part of a really amazing research opportunity that will really contribute to helping the trees in our local area. And I would like to thank my site supervisor, Dr. Joey Holbert, and my faculty advisor, Dr. Tim Billow, and give a huge thanks to all of my peers and my friends and family for all their love and support throughout this whole thing.
Lindsay's got fans in the audience. Okay, Lindsay, questions?
Yes.
Is there a standardized methodology for computing the dieback percentages? And is that, if people wanted to get involved, is that something, a skill they can kind of pick up relatively quickly? How does that work?
So for this project, this one's a little bit different than my own personal one. So this project doesn't include the percentages because that is pretty objective. So that's something that I tried to kind of control with just myself. But this project contains other questions such as like what symptoms you're seeing. So if you're seeing like thinning, browning, bare top, mechanical scratches, or like sidewalk kind of impeding on the roots, just more factors like that to kind of like figure out what's really driving the dieback. Yeah.
Other questions? We have one down. Oh, you have a bunch. Okay.
In the back.
Do you think the season or like winter quarter when you did it had anything to affect your results?
I don't think so. My site supervisor didn't seem to think that that would play a difference, but I do wonder if I waited and did it like in the summer, maybe if the trees would have had more heat damage after like a really hot summer. So yeah, that definitely would be interesting to look at again. And I'm hoping to continue more observations this summer, so I guess we'll see.
One more question?
Yes.
Why did you choose to use trees that just ranked 1 to 3 and 8 to 10?
Yeah, so I decided to only use like the lower and higher ends of the ranking just so that I'd get a good sample of kind of like low health disparities and high, and to make this project more manageable for myself since it was only in a few weeks time frame that I could collect the trees. So yeah.
Okay, maybe one more.
Yes.
Was it difficult for you to find ways to narrow down which types of trees and which areas to study throughout time?
Yeah, it was definitely difficult at first when I was like first trying to decide what to do, but luckily my site supervisor was working on this Western red cedar dieback map, so I just kind of took that and I was like, oh, I can kind of like kill two birds with one stone, you know, work on that, add observations, and then also do my own research project. So that's how I decided.
Great. Thank you so much.